Insurance claims.
Bruchim Aboim B'Shem Egen Shir. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shiur from Rabbi Yakov on insurance-related questions. I have the exclusive sponsor of shiur. Call Egen Shir at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Smith.
Someone's car was damaged. And the story was that al pi Torah there wasn't a chiyuv to pay. It was a grama, maybe a cotton did it, whatever the case is. His car was damaged, heavily damaged, but there was no chiyuv to pay al pi Torah. But he wanted to know, is he allowed to sue the other person because the other person had insurance? Are you allowed to make an insurance claim which al pi Torah there's no chiyuv, but according to insurance regulations is a perfectly legitimate claim? They'll pay for it. Of course, the question becomes a little more complicated when it has to go to court. You're allowed to sue in court. So as we'll see, we'll have probably over a dozen questions regarding to insurance claims. But I think as our derech always is try to find one yesod, how do we understand, how does halacha look at insurance? You know, it's interesting, a person could have a big loss and insurance pays the loss. Now, anybody who's intelligent knows they're not doing a chesed. Insurance companies, a multi-million-dollar business, they're making plenty of money on this chesed. Basically, people, thousands and hundreds of thousands of people invest the premiums monthly, yearly, whatever it is. And basically, if there's a need, they will pay the losses. But basically, it's the money that you invest, they pay you when you need it. So now the question is, when a person has a damage and they pay, is that a form of a payment? Instead of the mazik paying, the insurance pays. Or, which is more logical, the mazik did hezek, but it's my insurance that I've been investing all these years, I'm paying the premium. Maybe it's my investment. I've been paying premiums and they're willing to pay for the loss. Now let me give you a question that I think is extremely negeya, but will very much crystallize our question. This is what's known as double compensation or double dipping, but it's all the same idea. Now I don't want everybody to be confused. I'd like to keep things simple. We're going to talk about one case, and instead of saying Ruvain and Shimon, because people forget who's Ruvain and who's Shimon, we're going to stay with Mazik and Nizik. Mazik and Nizik, everybody knows, and if you do forget for a moment, so Nizik and Nebuch, the one that Nebuch got damaged, he's the Nizik. So it's Mazik and Nizik. Let's talk about a simple case. Mazik damaged Nizik's house. Big damages. Mazik has no insurance. You know, we'll soon see when a person drives a car, he has to have liability insurance. But a person that makes a fire doesn't have to have insurance. So the Nizik lost thousands of dollars. And now the only alternative is that the Nizik will claim his insurance. He has fire insurance. So he does that. He's paying all these years. He might as well collect. So, but the Nizik turns to the Mazik, says, Reb Mazik, you made it to a Mishnah, Arba Avos Nizikin, you burnt my house and you have to pay. So the Mazik is a mechutzif, grada, and he says, listen, I happen to know for a fact that you have a lot of fire insurance. In fact, I'm your insurance broker. And I know that you could probably make more money than you lost. So you're getting paid. What do you want from me? Take the insurance and leave me alone. And the Nizik snaps back, I'm a chutzif. You are mazik, Adam are mazik, Makabem Yishalmena, you pay. I invested all these years. I've been paying insurance premium all these years. I'm finally making some money in my investment. What do you want from me? You know, some people almost wait. They should have damages so they should collect some money. But certainly I paid and I deserve the money. This is what's called double compensation or double dipping. In other words, I want the mazik to pay because Makabem Yishalmena. But then again, I made investment. I've been paying all these years premium. So let me collect. Let me make a few dollars. I'm still not going to make back all the premiums from all the years. So the question is, al pi halach, is that a legitimate taina? The nizik will walk out with double his loss. Now, b'yesa bio, b'yesa gishmak. Let me ask you this question. Let's say Mazik burned down Nizik's house. Same story. Nizik happens to have a very wealthy uncle, And the uncle says, "Oi, I heard you had a terrible loss. I'm sending you a check for the loss." And he does. Is there any suffix in the world that Mazik still has to pay? I got a present from my uncle. What does that have to do with you? So I got a present and you have to pay. Now the question is, if it's not a present from my uncle, but if it's an insurance payment, do we say that's b'makayim the payment, so Mazik is off the hook? Or, what do you mean? It's not a payment for the Mazik, it's my insurance. I'll give you another example. Again, that will crystallize it even more. Let's say, someone had a very expensive becha, and he gave it to a Shem Bechinim to watch. He trusted him. The Shem Bechinim is a nervous fellow, so he took out insurance. You could do insurance, whatever you want. Took out insurance on the becha that he was watching, and the becha was stolen. So the Shem Bechinim claims insurance, because he had a legitimate insurance. He gets paid $500,000 for the becha. The owner of the becha comes running, so what's going on here? You're making money on my becha? That's the payment for my becha. So Shem Bechinim says, wait a minute, you didn't take out insurance. You made me a shayma. Shem Bechinim is a pasuk in the Torah. You're pata. So I'm pata. What do you care if I make money? So how do you look at that? Is it a payment? Is it an investment? Today you could take insurance on someone else's life. Why can't I take insurance on a becha? It's not mine. So we have to find out how halacha, how the Torah views the understanding of insurance, and then we can apply it to many shaylas. So approximately 150 years ago, there was one of the Gedolei Olam in his times, the Harei Besamim in Tinyana Simin Reish Mem Hey. He had mamish awish shayla of double compensation. A neighbor was a mazik and burned down the nizik's house. Not b'mezid, but it was a pshia. So the nizik, of course, had a fire insurance, and then he told the mazik, there's an eish, the mazik of eish, you have to pay. And the mazik said, and shuldik, you got insurance payment, leave me alone. In fact, he said, there's not even a loss, because you got payment. So, here's the question, is he have a good taina? So, Zok Tahari Besamim, this is a Mishnah and a Gemara in Bava Kama, but here we'll see the nitzchias of Torah, how everything is in our Torah. The Mishnah in Bava Kama, Daf Kuf Tes Vavam Abeis, has the following story. 2 donkeys were drowning. Don't ask me why, but that's the story. 2 donkeys were drowning. One was much more valuable than the other. It seemed that the owner of the less valuable donkey was able to save one of the donkeys. The other one couldn't save any donkey. But the owner of the less valuable donkey could save one donkey. So the owner of the valuable donkey made a cheshbon. He says, you know what? You save my donkey, and your donkey will drown. I'll pay you for your donkey. Zenena v'zenena. You just save mine, and I'll pay you for yours, so we'll both be happy, because I can't save any. And kachavi. He jumped in and he saved the valuable donkey. And he comes out, Vahila Maifis, the less valuable donkey survived. So now we have the valuable donkey and his donkey. So he turns to the owner of the valuable donkey and says, okay, pay me. You promise you're going to pay me for my donkey. So the other person says, what do you mean? Your donkey's right here. What do I have to pay you? There's no hezek. But you said you're going to pay me. That's the Gemara's Kshayla in Kuf Tezayin Amir Aleph. So the Gemara, the one that jumped in could say, listen, Min Hashmayim Rachmu Alai. I did the job that you told me to do, and I deserve payment. I have my own donkey as well. That's a windfall. That's a Matana Min Hashmayim. I did what I was supposed to. What do you care if I get money? Now, this is a pliya, because you're getting money for what? For being damaged? Your donkey wasn't damaged. Zok Tahari B'samim, it seems from here that getting paid is lav dafka when there's a loss. Even if there's no loss, you did what you have to do, you get paid. Zok Tahari B'samim here too. You damage my house, you burn my house, you have to pay. I don't have a loss. Min Hashmayim Rachmu Alai. A beautiful dimion. Had he stopped there, I think it would be wonderful. But then he takes an interesting turn. And he says, no, it's not a raya. Because when the donkey was drowning, and it's supposed to drown, it's considered avod. It's considered loss. A lost item, there's payment. But a house that has insurance on it, even if it burns to the ground, it's not a loss. If there's no loss, there's no mazik. If there's no mazik, there's no payment. And he has another taina. And he says something, again, you could argue with it, but this is what he says. If you notice, and he proves from 6 different sources, ayin sham, that min hashamayim rachmu alai only works when something happens min hashamayim. Like the donkey somehow was miraculously saved, or other cases that he quotes in the Gemara. But here, it's very different. Here, the owner of the house made a clever move and took out insurance. That's not min hashamayim rachmu alai. You took out insurance, so claim your insurance. But listen to this. That's the clincher, he says. You know what the emes is? The mazik turns to the ניזק and says, Min hashamayim yirachmu alai, that I damaged the house of a clever investor who took out fire insurance, so I thank you for your insurance and leave me alone, and he walks away. Min hashamayim yirachmu alai goes on me, the mazik. You took out insurance, claim your insurance, leave me alone. But this point, what I think is, as he says it at the end, because in every case there's a mazik and you have to pay the hezek. Here there's no hezek because you have insurance. Your house is insured. And that's his main point. By a fire insurance, it's as if there's no hezek to the owner of the house. He does add, but of course, if the insurance doesn't compensate the full loss, let's say they're only 75%, so of course you have to make up the difference. But if they in fact compensate the full loss, then the mazik could walk out and say, Min hashamayim yirachmu alai, and I am absolved of any responsibilities. Now I ask you, doesn't this give us clear guidance in what the uptake of a insurance policy is? It's a payment for the hezek. So therefore, rightfully so, the mazik says, Reb Nizik, you got paid, leave me alone. You don't get paid twice. Ad kan divrei harei b'samim. However, if you think about it objectively, there's a very, very big makom l'chalik. Because if anything, it's punkt fakert. If something happens min hashamayim, it's not so pashut. I could say, listen, the Baruch Hashem did it, therefore leave me alone. But that's the chiddush min hashamayim yirachmu alai. You're allowed to go with that. But let's say I made a wise investment, kol shkein and kal v'chayma, we could say, min hashamayim yirachmu alai. I made a wise investment, which means that besides the mazik paying, I want to get insurance claims also. So what's wrong with saying, pay me twice? Fakert. Maduch min hashamayim that I didn't do, I get credit. Kol shkein, something I did do, I should get credit. So you have to pay, and min hashamayim yirachmu alai. And that is the taina of the Or Sameach. Now, typically the Or Sameach is a pirish on the Rambam Kayadua, but in Perek Zayin Halacha Aleph, he has a Shaila and Tshuva, Nishalti, and he has mamish, our question of double payment, where a tenant accepts the responsibility for the house burned down, and the ניזק, the landlord had fire insurance, but he says, tenant, you accept the responsibility to pay, please pay. The tenant says, but you have fire insurance. Why should I pay? Zokti Or Sameach, of course he didn't see the Hari B'Samim, but he says, I have a Beferish Gemara in Bava Kama Kuf Tezayin, that even though there's no hezek, but you have to pay because min hashamayim yirachmu alai. So he's taking the same Gemara and he's saying that the ניזק, the homeowner, could say min hashamayim yirachmu alai. Why am I paying you if there's no damage? That's the Gemara in Bava Kama Kuf Tezayin, because he didn't lose his donkey, but he gets paid. So here also, I didn't lose my house, but I get insurance claims because it's my investment. We'll soon get to it. We're going to get there. Hold on. This is what he says. And therefore he has other rayas, ayin sham, but he concludes emphatically, even though you might argue on the rayas, but hadin boror, that the soicha has to pay, even though the homeowner will be collecting insurance as well. So the Or Sameach is paskin, a double dipping, in fact, is al pi halacha acceptable. We'll soon get to your time. Then I saw a marsham in Chelik Dalet Siman Zayin, The Marsham also has the same shaila about double compensation. He goes also with the raya, but I think what's for us important to hear, he says, we don't need rayas, Dr. Marsham. He says, mazik, you have to pay. If the balabas will be marviach because he took out insurance, why is that your business? Was geht dechan? But listen to what he says. Poshet ve'enai misvara she'ein la'asayr shum schos b'ma she'asaz ela asmai mischar. He made an investment with the insurance policy. That's none of your business, mazik. Mazik, you have to pay. He's going to claim from his insurance policy. V'hu revach shel mischar. That's an investment. That's like you invest in the stock market and it goes up. So you can't take my money. This is my investment. I've been paying good money for this. V'alei guf habayis hu shel habayis v'hu sarfei. And you, mazik, burnt my house down. Echial adas. Shehu yarviach, the mazik will gain because I have a fire insurance. I've been paying premium for 20 years and the house burns down and he says, leave me alone because your investment. It doesn't make a bit of sense. Echiyal al adas, that you could pater yourself because of his investment. So what I saw for the Marsham is he is clearly labeling and identifying that insurance is an investment. It's not a payment for the hezek, it's an investment. And I want to mention one of the tainas that he does bring, and he throws it in kalachayad, but it's extremely important. There's a well-known Mishnah, we learned that in Bava Metzia, Lamed Hey, the famous case in Bava Metzia. If someone rents a parah michaverei, soicha, he's paying money, so he's potter in many instances. And during the time of schiris, he loaned it to someone else. Now the other someone else is a shayach, and they got damaged. So logic will say, well, the soich is pot on the damage because it was, let's say, an inus, but the shayach has to pay. So there's a sheet in the Mishnah that, believe it or not, that we tell the shayach, you pay the soich. The balabas say, it's my donkey. You stay out of it. You have no shaykhis because I'm a soich. So the one that caused the damage, whatever, that lost the item, has to pay to the soich. Zok Rabbi Keitzad. This is ridiculous. Halachos is chayr basar shel chaverei. The soich givon avoy liyid. He takes someone else's parah and he makes money on it. So the Marsham, he says, the mamash b'kitzvi, you have to know where he's coming from. He says, what's going on here? This is the ניזק. This is my house and my insurance policy, and the mazik comes along with audacity, and he wants to do schayra with my house and my insurance policy. He damaged my house, and he wants my insurance to pay for my house. Because insurance is an investment, my investment. So how could the ניזק pay the mazik for the mazik? The Har Tzvi in a Tshuvan Chayshim Mishpat Siman Kuf Membeis quotes the Hari B'Samim and has the same taina, that this is basically the nizik's investment and you can't make give the mazik right to use that investment. So the point seems to be that al pitayr, when a mazik does hezek, he pays. If the nizik is a wise investor and took out an insurance policy, that's to his benefit, not to his detriment. You'll ask, but Lamaisa, why is the nizik getting paid? He has no loss. Then we'll use Bava Kama. It's not a question of loss. You damage my house, you burnt the house, you have to pay. Then I found a real treat. The Chelkas Yoyev, one of the G'dolei Poland in Chelik Bey, Siman Tzadik and Siman Tzadik Aleph. It's two versions of the same idea. He lived approximately 25 years after the Hari B'Samim and the Marsham. He doesn't mention the Sameach, I'm not sure why, but anyhow, so he says, I saw two soldiers, he writes, two people fighting a Mechama. The Hari B'Samim and the Marsham, two Giborim fighting. And I think they both missed the point. That's what he says. They both missed a Beferish Gemara that will give us guidance for this Shaila. This very Shaila of double dipping is the Gemara, and listen to his Einfal Nifla, in Bava Kama Chavav Mebeis. And he says, really the question here is, why does someone pay when he's mazik, someone else? Does he pay because he damaged someone's property? You damage his property, you pay. Or does he pay because he caused someone else a loss, a hefsid? The nafkamina is if someone damaged someone else's property and there wasn't a loss of money. How could that be? Our case of insurance. You definitely damaged his car. But he has insurance, so there's no loss. So he says, the machloik is marsham, and the Hari B'samim is this question. Where do we find the answer to this question? So he says it's a Gemara in Bava Kama Chavav Amud Beis. In Gemara speaks about someone that threw someone's item out the window, and it was heading to be smashed to pieces, valueless. And before it lands, someone comes with a baseball bat and breaks it and the chayfetz. Does he have to pay that he broke the item? Is it a mana tvira tov? Is it already like a doomed item? It has no value to the, right? It's not considered a chayfetz. Or right now it's fine. In fact, the B'shayim discuss if someone shot an arrow at the chayfetz. It's even less of a problem with the chayfetz. There's nothing wrong with the chayfetz. But tainit the halachos yoyev, but no one says, of course he's potter because there's no loss to the bailam. As far as the bailam is concerned, this chayfetz will be either broken by the landing or by the arrow. No one says that he's potter because there's no loss to the bailam. Evidently, mazik is lav dafka loss to the bailam. Mazik is you broke my item, you have to pay. So even if there's no loss to the bailam, you have to pay. The only redeeming factor might be if it's mana tfira tava, so b'chefta is not a chayfetz. But the fact that you damage my item, even if there's no loss, zok the halachos yoyev, you have to pay. And then if you look, you'll see it's a beautiful tshuva to go through. He has, again, close to half a dozen rayas that mazik is lav dafka loss. But I'll just tell you one of them because we have a big agenda. He says the Gemara in Gitna in Daf Membeis has the following case. If someone beat up his eved, so the pasuk says he has to send him lacheres. Before he had a chance to give him a star shichra, someone else was mazik the eved. Who does the money of the hezek go to? So the Gemara says the money goes to the balabas, because right now he's still the balabas. The balabas, did not suffer any loss with the eved being beaten because anyhow he's going lacheres. Teretz is mazik is lav dafka loss. Mazik is damage. You did damage, you pay. So therefore he says basically that there's no chiluk if the house is insured. If taka you damage someone's house, you have to pay. And then he says another raya to his Yesod, the Mishnah in Bava Metzia Lamed Hayamid Beis, where the Gemara says, where the Mishnah says a taina of Keitzad Halo Ois Eschar B'Parasti Shel Chaveiroi. But he says, the Shvus Yankov says, listen to this. Let's say a Shema Chinam took an item to watch, and he decided to be a real good Shema, so he paid someone, he paid a Shema Sacha to watch the item. And L'maisa the Shema Sacha, the item was lost, in a way that the Shema Sacha has to pay. Who does he pay to? So the Zok Shvus Yaakov has to pay to the Shema Chinam, not to the owner. Zok Shvus Yaakov, if the Shema Chinam paid money for the Shmira, so it's his schayra. It's like his para. He's doing schayra with his own investment. So therefore the money goes to him. Zok the halachos yoyev, if I took out insurance, but it's even more than that. I took out insurance in my house. So it's not lakuli alma. You can't, mazik can't come along and say, take the payment for yourself. That's a real haloi schar basa shel chaveiroi. Why? Because the home and the insurance is my schara, my investment. So coming back to our original question, if there is a damage, can the ניזק claim double payment? It's actually a machlekes gedolei haposkim. The Hari B'samim holds not. We saw a Arsameach, a Marsham, we also saw the Har Tzvi, and the truth is, a lot of the Heintik Poskim also say this. I saw the Hari Laris Nosin and the Kinyan Torah, and it seems that the consensus of most Poskim, besides the Hari B'samim, that double compensation in halacha is not a problem. Because it's my investment, you're a mazik, you have to pay. Now, the only question is, so does that mean that I could actually claim from the mazik halacha lamaisa? So as we will see, halacha yes, lamaisa it's almost never negay, and I'll explain why. First of all, let's say I go and I claim my insurance, I'm the nizik, and then I go to the mazik, you pay up because we paskin like the Arsameach. So he says, I don't know who you are, I pass like the Hari Besamim. Kimli. So the klal is in Chayshim Mishpat, even if Rav sheet is held one way, if you could attach yourself to one sheet that holds differently, you could say Kimli, I go with the shita, and you can be Maitzi Mammon. It's a suffix. So if the nizik, if the mazik is a little tamachachim, he'll say Kimli like the Hari Besamim. So you can't, no double compensation. So that's the first thing. The nizik could taka claim it, but the mazik will say Kimli. That I saw taka just in the Emek Halacha, to Vigosi in Chelik Aleph, Ayin Vav, he taka, even though the Rav Pais can go with the shita that it is muta, but he could say Kimli. I also saw a truth from Avtali Nussbaum and the Hayashiv Atayv in Chayveres Chaf, who also says it, even though Rav Pais can hold it's muta, but the nizik, the mazik could say Kimli like the P'turim. That's one cheshb. Now, let's say fakert. So let's say the nizik is a smart fellow. He does things right. He first goes to the mazik and says, Reb Mazik, you pay me. Okay, Mazik has no choice. I'm not giving a shemana. Then he wants to claim insurance for the damage. So that is already a chutzpah. I'll tell you why. Because who's paying the insurance? The mazik's insurance. The mazik's liability insurance. The mazik's investment. Now wait a second. If you claimed payment from the mazik, then you can't go to the mazik's insurance and claim double payment. That's two payments from the same person. That's illegal. That's wrong. Till now we spoke about the mazik has to pay, and I get my windfall min hashemayim from the nizik's insurance. That's my investment. But to go claim from the mazik and then go claim from the mazik's insurance doesn't make sense. Not al pi Torah, not al pi law. Now let me ask you another question. Let's say he went to the mazik and he claimed insurance and he claimed payment. Then he went to the insurance and whatever it is he worked out and he took a double payment. That's obviously wrong. Even b'diavad, you can't take what's not yours. Let's say a different case. A person's house was damaged. He first went to the mazik. Mazik, you're an adma mazik, pay for my house. Okay, he has no choice. He has no insurance. Then the nizik goes to his insurance, and I want payment because my house burned down. And they don't ask questions; they pay him. Now the mazik comes to life and, oh, you got payment from your insurance? Give me back the money because you got payment from your insurance. So who has right of way? So now it's fakert. Now the nizik will say Kimli, like all the gedolei olam, that I'm allowed to take double insurance, double payment, because now he's the murzik, so he's a cheverman. But that might work until we go a little further. But basically, I think you have to realize, and that's what I'm trying to point out and bring out, a regular insurance of the nizik is his investment. Liability insurance, which you can't drive a car without it, is the mazik's insurance. There's no havmin in the world you could collect from the mazik and then cut to the mazik's insurance, because the mazik insurance is paying for the mazik. That's his investment. His premium goes up, and he's getting the hassle. So basically, the only way to double dip would be if you go to the mazik first and get payment. If he pays you, fine. And then you go to your insurance. But this is the problem, because the law is, and you sign the contract, you could only collect payment from insurance if you didn't get payment from elsewhere. And if you got payment from the nizik, from the mazik, then you have no right to get from your insurance. So you could say, but what about the Sameach and the Har Tzvi and Marsham? So tell it to the insurance company. But their law, and you sign the law, is you cannot claim payment if you got payment from elsewhere. So therefore, even though the Marsham, the Semeach, the Hartzvi felt it was mutter. I guess in those days it was not contrary to the law or contrary to your agreement. So for someone to sign that I didn't get payment is, of course, the same Issa Deraisa of Sheker and Geneva. So double dipping might be mutter and halacha, but it's not workable, it's not feasible in our society where the law does not allow one person to take two payments. So that's why basically, someone told me, I'm not familiar, but there's a certain type of medical expense that it is permissible to have double payment. Certainly a life insurance, a person could have 2 life insurance or 3, these things are more or less business deals. But basically the insurance for damage is 1 payment. You can't claim 2 payments. Now the emes is, the Minchas Yitzchak in the Tshuva, and it very sharply worded Tshuva in Chele Gimel, the end of Kuf Chavav, he says no person, no moral, ethical person will take double payment. Because if Lamaisa, they pay you, you can't take a second payment. Lamaisa, you'll say, they are Semeach, Usiyata, that was when it was legal. But to do something that's wrong is certainly contrary to halacha. Now, she'll ask you, so why should I take up insurance? So then consult with your insurance broker. It's not going to change the halacha. If they say you can't take double payment, then you can't do that. To go to the insurance first and then go to the mazik, the mazik will say, Kimli, that you can't take double payment. Now, the only issue that I wanted to mention is, which really, it starts to get a little more lebedik, is the following common case. A person damages someone else's car. Okay, we're going back to cars. And the mazik says, don't worry, I have liability insurance. The Nizik says, listen, I don't want to have business with these insurance companies. It's a hassle, it's a headache. Mazik, you pay me. The Mazik says, what do you mean? I don't pay out of pocket if I have insurance, but I don't want to deal. So I don't want to deal with insurance. So nowhere in the Torah does it say, Makabem Yishalmenu, out of pocket. Here we will say that liability insurance is a form of orev for me, the Mazik. So I could tell the Nizik, I'm going to pay you. You're going to get the full amount, don't worry. You have to wait. Okay, so the mazik has to be a mensch, and to make it as quick and painless as possible. But you can't be mechayev the mazik to pay out of pocket when he has an insurance that he's been investing to fulfill that payment. Again, if the nizik incurs some type of cost, so the mazik would have to pay for that. But again, this is not something you're going to find in Ferish Pasik, but this is minimally Vasisa Yashav Atayv. Why should he pay out of pocket if he has an insurance willing to pay? You have to wait, okay. Now again, the mazik has to be a mensch, but he has to do it in the most efficient way possible. Especially, think about that. He wants the mazik to pay, and the Goyish insurance company will not have to pay what they have to pay. I mean, he's not cheating, he's just doing something that's not seicheldik. Now, often it happens fakert. Mazik damages Nizik's car. And Mazik runs to the Nizik, please don't claim insurance. I have liability, but don't claim. This is my 4th accident this week alone. If I claim insurance, I'm not going to have a license or insurance. I'm finished. I'll pay out of pocket. But the Nizik knows the Mazik's a cheverman, 4 accidents per week, He goes, yeah, till you pay me, it's going to be year and yovel. I want money right away. I'm going to go to the liability insurance. I want to claim it. I have a right to claim it. So again, here, the truth is, here we could hear a little more of the taina that the mazik has. I've been investing all these years in this insurance, and now you want to use it against me. I have to pay. Doesn't mean I have to pay through insurance. I have to pay my own money. So he could say, you're not allowed to do that to me. You can't go to my insurance if it's going to hurt me. How much do I owe you? I'll pay you out of pocket. Now, again, the mazik has to be a mensch. The Rashba says, if tsar b'alachayim v'nisa deraisa, kolshkein tsar of b'nei adam. Halacha. It's pashut. So the mazik, you can't send the mazik on a wild goose chase. Leich v'shoiv, come back next week, because then he might have a good taina. I want to pay him, but not agbas nefesh. But the aside is, here we could see that the insurance payment of the mazik, the liability, is the arev of the mazik. So give me a chance, and hopefully, in this case, I want it to work. If I don't want it to be used, I will pay you out of pocket. Don't go to my insurance against my will, which will be to my detriment. a different situation, again, you have to just know there's basically two concepts, either a liability, but more often than not, regular insurance payment is the nizik's insurance. Someone damaged someone's house or someone's person, whatever it is. But typically, let's say a person burned someone's house down, so it's the fire insurance of the ниזק. So here we will say the way a person should do it al pi seichel, give the mazik, the mazik will tell the ניזק, you claim your insurance and you'll get payment. Double dipping is mutter again in halacha, but not in lamais in our times because it doesn't work. But now the ניזק says, listen, I don't mind claiming my insurance. Remember, you did the damage, I'm claiming my insurance. Step one. And number two, as soon as I claim my insurance, the premium skyrockets up. So let's put this in perspective. You damage my house, I'm paying for the damage, and I'm paying my higher premium. You're walking out not a red cent. And I have to pay for the damage of my insurance, and I have to pay the raise in premium. Now, the embassy of the Lamdan might say, but the raise in the premium is only a grama. The mazik didn't hit him over the head. He damaged his his house, and that caused the raise in the premium. So first of all, I looked into this. It's not for now, but some poskim hold that a premium an increase is a garmi. It happens instantaneously. I mean, insurance doesn't give you any question about it. If there's a claim, the insurance goes up. So garmi. But the truth is, even if it's grama, but then again, why should I sustain a loss to help you? If you don't like this, if you don't let me charge you at least for the raise in premium, so you pay me out of pocket. But think about it. The mazik burnt the nizik's house down. He doesn't want to pay. Take your insurance. And the loss of the premium, you have to foot the bill. That's not seichel. Doesn't make sense. So the poskim taka say that even if it's only a grama, makes no chiluk. The nizik will tell the mazik, I'm giving you a choice. You are a makah b'hem yishal man. You're a mishnah of abavas nazikin. Either you pay me, you want me to go through my insurance, at least pay me the loss. And that is your choice. And that, of course, makes sense. And that's Toradic. And that's perfectly legal because this is something that's very seicheldik. This leads to the next question, and a very challenging question. The same case where there's a hezek, and it's only the insurance of the nizik that will pay. Mazik doesn't have insurance. Again, it could be typically, usually, unless your car, the mazik doesn't have insurance. But here's one slight complicating factor. Al pi Torah, the mazik is not mechuyev to pay. Let's say it's only a grama, or a child did something, or it was a case of a bor, which is potter on kalim. There are many cases that the hezek was definite, a big hezek. But a dayan said this is not chayv al pi Torah. But the law of the land, the chayka medina, insurance, will honor this claim because it's a legitimate hefsek. They don't know there's a patur called cotton or grama or bar potter on kalim. They're willing to pay. So now the nizik is an elachayid. And the nizik is, what should I do? Can I take him to court? Can I sue him? If he has insurance, if he doesn't have insurance, what's the chiluk? But if it's not a hezek, and especially if the mazik does have some insurance, and you're going to make someone pay, al pi Torah, there's no chiyuv. So there is a loss, but there's no mazik al pi Torah. Another problem is very often, I'm not saying always, when you want to sue someone, you have to go to court. Now, the truth is, just mentioning the word going to court send the shudder down our spines. I mean, something like such a gruesome chil Hashem. I mean, this oilam, I don't have to talk about it, but we know the terrible, terrible, terrible aver of going to court. So here, the nizik is confronted with a double problem. He's claiming money that's not al pi Torah, and he might even have to go to court. So the truth is, this I saw, and I have a unpublished truth from Rabelsky, and what he says he heard from many gedolim, and Rabbi Yashi said this as well. Basically, if people take out insurance, the understanding is that the insurance works with the insurance laws, which are not keneged Torah lahachis, but have a different set of regulations. And a person that walks in the street or drives or does anything is going with that understanding. Now, if he's the mazik, he will say, okay, we're going with the Torah laws. But let's say he's the Nizik. His house was burnt down by someone, but al pi halacha there was a patur of this or that. But he would want insurance to help him. So it's almost as if there's an aldas kain that when a person takes out insurance, and we all want the world should go b'darchei shalom, that there's an understanding that we go with the chayka medina. It's almost aldas kain that's the way it's done. Now, this is what he writes. He says, Rabbi Yasha said this, and even if it means going to court, it's as if Bezin authorized that because that's the only way to collect money. You can't sue someone out of court. Now, of course, this should not be misconstrued or certainly abused, but the Pischei Choshen in the Zikin, Perigura, or Memvav also says this far regarding the other Shaila. Even though Pitar there's no Hezek, but there's Aldas Kain that people live in this world, and it's the only way it will work is if we go in harmony. Rav Sternbuch in Chele Gimel, Taf Amdal says, Beferish, a person could claim money that Shalei Pitayra as long as that's the Chayka Medina, because that's what insurance, those are the insurance guidelines. Now we know Dina Machusa Dina does not allow us to violate the Torah, but the Torah says you follow Dina Machus Dina, it's not a stira. Now again, before Khalil a person will go into court, he should know that he's doing the right thing, but basically this is somewhat of a Aldas Kain understanding that this is basically the way it's done. But the truth is, just to mention another point, and again I'm saying this with caution, I'm not saying all agree, but I've heard Dayanim have said this in the past. The fact is that I cannot take another yid to court, chas v'shalom, and I can't claim him to pay me if I'll be Torah, he's potter. That's true, both are true. But when a person makes an insurance claim, he's not suing the other yid, he's suing the insurance company. And who's paying at the end of the day? The insurance company. So it is no issa of taking money from insurance company that acknowledges that the law is that this is responsible. In other words, if I make a yid pay shalai kedin, it's an avla. If I take a yid to court, that's an avla. If I take a guy to court or the guyish insurance company and they have to pay shalai al pitayra, it's not an avla because that's really, they understand to be the fair thing. In other words, they're using our yisoid that insurance is not a payment per se for the nizik. It's a separate entity. It's my investment and they are involved. So once it's a separate entity, it's my investment, they're on their own, and you're suing a guy, not a yid. What's really challenging is a question that happens, and I saw this in a few different shuvas. A person moved into an apartment, he was a tenant, didn't own it, and he decided to take out fire insurance. The landlord was not interested, didn't take out any insurance, and the house burned down. And you're talking about in our neighborhoods, one apartment could be $500,000. And the tenant had a legitimate insurance that paid $500,000, whatever it is. And the landlord is fuming. This is unthinkable. He's making money on my house. It's my house that burned down. How could the tenant take the insurance claim? So the tenant says, let's start again. You took out no insurance. The fire was not I didn't do it. It happened. There was an Einis Gama. So you left yourself vulnerable. If I took out insurance, that's my investment. So why can't I claim the money? So I don't know if the landlord knows the Mishnah or not, but his taina is, this is unthinkable. You're getting paid for the house that doesn't belong to you? No. If they pay you for your desk and your dining room table and your break front, no. That's a tiny amount of the payment. But this Rabbi is mamish our shayla. If you hold that insurance is a payment for the loss, it goes to the owner. But if it's an investment, who made the investment? What's so unthinkable to say that the money, believe it or not, goes to the tenant? And who says this? The Ar Sameach. The same Ar Sameach, but actually it's earlier in Hilchos Chiras Perikei Halacha Vav, another unusual nishalti. In the middle of the Sefer Ar Sameach, he has Shilas and Shuvas. This is one of them. And he has this very shaila. A person rented an apartment from someone else, and he took out insurance, and Lamaisa it burned down, was not the fault of the tenant. And the Ar Sameach basically says, this sounds like how could the tenant take this payment if the house belongs to the landlord? But then he says, beautiful chiluk that for us is music to our ears. He says, in the case of the Mishnah, there the payment is for the lost animal. That belongs to the balabas. Here, the payment is not for the house that burned down per se. It's my investment, my schayra. It's my investment, so I could realize the profit of my investment. And his lashon is, the reason why you're collecting is because it's your investment. So why can I do it? He didn't invest. Again, people take out life insurance on someone else's life, but it belongs to them. But then at the end he says that I saw a shayla meish. I looked it up in Tinyana Chayla Gimel Kuf Chav Ches that has this very shayla, and the shayla meishiv says, but lemaisa it doesn't sound right. How could you take $500,000 for the payment of a floor of an apartment that's not yours? So he says, the shayla meishiv writes that he heard the psak of the Chachmei Brodi, that in such a case 1/3 of the payment goes to the tenant and 2/3 goes to the landlord. So it's interesting that in Svara, it's not so hard to believe it fully goes to the tenant. I saw the Evan Yisrael, so Yanka Fisher, Chelik Ches, Simon Sad the Gimel. He has a similar shayla. Someone took out insurance on his apartment, or the house, whatever he rented, fully rented, and a big tree fell and destroyed the house. So now the tenant wants to collect the insurance money, and the landlord says, whatever, it's my house. So again, he says also that Lamaisa, the Or Sameach has this, and he goes with the Chachmei Brodi that you have to make a pshara 2/3 and 1/3. But if you want to think a little bit, and you'll see it, this is the intriguing part of today's sugya. Insurance is a patent, is a new metzius. I take out insurance on anything I want. I could take out insurance in your house. I don't know if it's legal, but on your life, I can do what I want. But at the end of the day, it ends up that I'm going to make money on you. But that's the insurance. The insurance acknowledges that and legitimizes that. But the poskim seem to say, but still, think about it. A person makes a $500,000 collection on someone else's house. It just doesn't sound right. Even though it's his schayra, it's his investment. So that's the shayla. You can think about that as well. Okay, hold. But what interesting is, if Lamaisa, the question I began with, I gave my $500,000 becha to a shemachinam, and he took out insurance, and it was stolen, whatever it is, and there's definitely going to be payment. Who does the money go to? So it's the same difficulty. It's not so hard to believe that the shema gets the $500,000. He did nothing, because the emes is the balabas didn't insure himself, and me and the balabas, it's a fair paskin Torah. Shemachim is patang aveda. But then I saw a beautiful ha'ara from the Pischei Choshen in Pikadon Perikhes, the end of ha'ara Nun Hey. He says there's a possible chiluk. Because in the case of the typical case of a regular shema, it was lost, the item was lost or stolen, whatever it is, you're paying for this lost item. So if the shema gets the money, so that's the item. So give it back to the real owner. That's why but in the case of insurance, the item is gone. No one's thinking they're replacing the item. They're paying the investment that you put in. The shayim is paying for the item. Let it go back to the original owner. But here, they're paying because you invested money in them. So it's your investment. So your investment you keep. It's not $500,000 for the becher. It's $500,000 for the investment. That's what he wants to say. But again, that's the patent of insurance. The question is that the item? But wait, you haven't seen anything yet. When a person actually gets the payment, I should mention a few points, and I'm going to tell you some really fascinating shilas. So basically, they send down an assessor, and whatever he evaluates the damage. It happens that you ended up fixing it, and you had some extra money, so that's perfectly legal. It's mutter. No one cheated anybody. They shot stuff based on their expensive repairs, so that money is perfectly mutter to keep. Of course, to this I don't have to tell you that you're not allowed to lie or cheat. I mean, that's sheker and geneva and everything else. Rabbi Yoina and Shari Tshuva Gimel Kuf Pei Daled. He says geneva's das by a yid is worse than geneva because sheker is a ashma rabba. That's basic Yiddishkeit. So we're not talking to people that do things wrong. We made an emesa a fair claim. In fact, they assessed it, so that's fine. If, let's say, they decide that the damage was $2,000 and you decide, you know what, I have to make a chasana, so I'll drive with the smashed up car. You're allowed to keep the money that they send. They're not paying for repairs, they're paying for damage. So that's perfectly okay. I heard once a shaila, I'm not proud to share with you, but the mazik exaggerated the cost, and Lamaisa, they sent a check, liability, to the ניזק. So now the mazik, listen, I cheated and you're going to get the money, you got to give me the money. So obviously that doesn't dignify a response, but the truth is the ניזק has right, because they're not paying him, it's a payment to him. Now I'm not saying it's kosher money. What's more of a kosher question is, let's say they made a pretty, a liberal assessment, more than the damage, but they sent it and everything was fair. Now the mazik comes to life and he says, listen, liability insurance, my insurance sent this, extra money. I deserve the extra money. Whatever loss you had, keep, but I want the extra money. Now that sounds like, a pretty illogical taina, because at the end of the day, they're paying what they assess was the damage. And they're paying to the ניזק. They don't send the money to the mazik for obvious reasons. They're not paying him to give back him the money. It's basically to the ניזק, and that makes sense. The ניזק could keep the money. If the mazik, if a person borrowed a car, borrowed his friend's car, and he damaged the car. So this is a very tricky question, because the emphasis is, this is a borrowing, a shoyel, kolanosh, he has to pay, unquestionably. But then again, the owner of the car, called the ניזק, has insurance. So this is a very tough shaila, because the emphasis is that the person that borrowed it is kolanosh, he has to pay. This is where the Minchas Yitzchak says a tremendous chiddush, and I mentioned earlier, Chayla Gimel, Simon Kuf Chavav, and he says basically no one would touch someone else's car if he knows that he didn't have to pay the damage. Because he knows that the person that owns the car has insurance that includes an extra driver. So Al Das Kain, he took the car, and that's the Minig Oilam, and he quotes, in fact, the Chavas Yoer in the Tshuva Simon Kuf Vav, that even if someone is mazik, but if there's a Das Kain, if there's a Minig Oilam, you can collect Keneged Minig Oilam. So the Minchas Yitzchak says this taina, that as long as this is legal, so you have to claim your insurance. And again, if the insurance goes up, so that's a matter between the ניזק and the shoyel. But to turn to the shoyel and say, mazik, you have to pay, that doesn't seem to be the halachic thing to do. Ma'aseh shahaya, true story, someone damaged someone's car, $2,000 damage, and I'll pay you next week. Okay, he's going to wait. In the interim, before the next week, someone else totaled the same car. So he's going to pay him a new car. So the first mazik comes, oh, guess what? I'm out of the picture. You're getting a new car. But that's ridiculous, because you damaged my car, $2,000. Makme mishal mena. There's a halachos chiv nachtetzu. No question about that. He's mechuyev to pay. The fact that I'm going to get extra money, that's none of your business. This is a mazik with a hefsid b'shas ma'isa, even though retroactively there's no hefsid, but you have to pay the $2,000. Now listen to the next question. Ma'aseh shahaya also, someone had an item and he lost his item. A yid found the item, he knows who it belongs to. But he heard that the loser of the item has insurance, and he's going to get reimbursed the full value of the item. So, when it comes to money, people are very become lam de shekep. He says, Oy bazoi, the aved that I found is an avedis akum. Because it's a goyish insurance company, avedis akum is dachmuta. So he wants to keep the item. So the emphasis for us, it's a good joke, but the truth is that it's not, the guy didn't kind of the aveda. That's as ridiculous as can be. This is an investment that if I have a loss, they will reimburse my loss. It's not a tmura of the item. It's not the item. The guy has no shaykhs to my item. This is a Yiddish aveda. There's a mitzvah of Heshvas aveda. If you have any doubts, the Chalkas Yankov in Chosh Mishpat Simon Chav Beis has this shaila. He says, besides the fact that Adam writes of a kav shalai, which is worth money, but he says basically the guy was makabel achrayis on the payment, not on the chayfetz. It's no shaykhs to avedis akum. But you haven't seen anything yet. Listen to this shaila. True story also. I saw this in one of the Batei Din had the shaila. Never Rachmana litzlan, a shul was they had a bunch of Sefer Torah was stolen, Rachmana litzlan, and were never recovered. So b'les breyer they had insurance, and they claimed insurance for the Sefer Torah, and of course there was a very significant payment. The shul, the gaboyim, the rav, whatever, made a very simple cheshbon that they have enough Sifrei Torah without the one that was stolen. But they need something. I'm just giving you they need a catering hall that could bring in an income. They want to use that money to build a catering hall, and the shul will have more income and they'll be able to do more avodas hakodesh. And they take the money, the insurance payment for the Sifrei Torah, and make other necessary expenses for the shul. So what comes to mind is the famous Rambam in Hilchos Tefillah Perek Yud Aleph halacha Yudalid, that you're not sell the Sefer Torah. If you did sell the Sefer Torah, the money is considered kodesh. It's tmuras Sefer Torah, and you can't use it for anything but buying more Sifrei Torah. Does that apply to our case? Absolutely not, because unfortunately, there's no way to bring back the Sifrei Torah. This payment is I'm realizing my investment. This is where I see that the investment of insurance pays, but it's not a tmura of the Sifrei Torah. Zogt Tzitz Eliezer Chelik Yud Ches Simen Samach Zayin. If the Ganev pays for the Sefer Torah that he stole, then you can't use of anything else, because that's tmura of the Sefer Torah. But this is payment for my investment. They don't care what was stolen, what was taken. They pay because that's on the books. But it's not replacing the Sifrei Torah. Again, he says it sarcastically, but it's a good point. If the Ganef will send a check that he feels guilty, so that's tmura. But this is basically not the Mei Sifrei Torah. So he says, where did I get this from? That insurance payment is not the item. I rely on the Or Sameach and the Marsham. And that's what we began with. That insurance is not a payment for the chayfetz per se, it's investment. So therefore he says, based on this, you could take the money and use it whatever you want. Now, the Emes Minchas Yitzchak, you'll see in Chelik Beis, Siman Ayin Vav, and the Pischei Choshen and Schiris, the end of Perek Vav, I'm not so convinced about that. Ayin Sham, but the truth is, the way I was told, the Poskim do understand it as such. It's not the replacing a Sefer Torah, it's them paying for my investment. Ma'aseh Shehoy, again, this is a true story. Someone owned a warehouse of chametz. He had a big, cookie business. And of course, before Pesach, he sold the chametz, including that warehouse. And his mazel, there was a fire on Pesach, and the entire warehouse burnt down. But he was insured for the fire insurance on that warehouse. But the problem really was that on Pesach, it wasn't his. It belonged to a guy. This guy didn't know how to spell insurance. He had no insurance on this warehouse. And I once heard such a shayla that the person could not claim insurance because there's no insurance for the interim of Pesach. But the ma'aseh that I'm talking about, happened to be one of the clauses of the insurance was that anything that's on my property is included in my insurance, even if it doesn't belong to me. So he didn't sell the warehouse to the guy, so it was his warehouse, it was the guy's chametz, so there was no problem as far as claiming insurance al pi chayk hamadina. But the other problem was that he's having enough from chametz. Chametz burned down on Pesach, asa b'hana, he's taking money of chametz. Isn't that an issa b'hana? So I saw in the Sefer Shimru Mishpat, Chelik Beis, Siman Pei, also, but they dinim shailas, that this very shaila, he says, no, you're making a mistake. It's not replacing the chametz. This is a panim chadash's balakan. This is a payment for an investment. It's not for the chametz per se. And he sends you to the Tzitz Eliezer that has a very similar approach. But it's all the same proper understanding of insurance. It's not like they somehow recreated the chametz, so therefore it's chametz. It's payment for a side investment called insurance. And last but not least, also I saw this ma'aseh shahaydi. I saw the Kinyan Torah has this shail in Chelik Hay. Someone was a handler and he had a business and he also sold schnapps on the side, but he had no license. If he was ever caught, they would confiscate the schnapps and they'd give him a hefty fine as well. Someone came into the store and was looking at a bottle of schnapps and he dropped it, broke it, mazik, adamud lo'ilam. He has to pay. A few minutes later, the inspector comes in and looking for schnapps, and he didn't see any schnapps. I guess it was during COVID, so he couldn't smell the schnapps. Doesn't say that, but anyhow, it was a problem. He didn't, so he walked out. So now the mazik is going to alarm him. He said, listen, if not for me, you would lose the schnapps and you would have to pay a fine. Now, you have no schnapps and you have no fine. So what did I do to you? So Rabbi say, this sounds good until today. Because as we showed from the Gemara in Bava Kama Chavav Beis, mazik is not totally in loss, it's totally in makrem yashal men, it's in a ma'isa mazik. And Taka, I saw the Kinyan Torah that I mentioned in Chelekei Kufn Dal that has this taina, and he says this is a kal v'chayma from the case of insurance. Because there, in that case, it was someone else did a hezek and it's my insurance. Here, it's not you. You no insurance. It was a davar bom and atzad. But I'm allowed to add just one point. There is a famous story about Rabbi Chaim. Now, the truth is there are many versions of the story, so I don't know if the story ever happened, but it's definitely attributed to Rabbi Chaim Brisker, that is, about someone that owned 2 stamps, the last 2 stamps of its kind in the world. Each was worth $10,000 each. And some person damaged one of the stamps, a real mazik. So you have to pay $10,000. But he realized that now that since only one stamp remaining in the entire world, the remaining stamp is worth $20,000. So he said, I'm not chayiv. So Rabbi Chaim brought a Gemara in Bava Kama Nuntes Ayin Sham that basically that mazik is lav dafka loss. Mazik is hezek. But there's one version of Rabbi Chaim that doesn't agree with what we said, and Rabbi Chaim said if the second stamp became exactly the value of both, so there's never halachos mazik. But let's say it's only 75% of the difference. So once it's a mazik in ganzen. But as we saw earlier, it's more mistavra. Like the first girsa, that it's not that a mazik is a mazik, and they have to pay for the hezek. I couldn't talk to you.
I'd like to thank Rabbi Smith for the wonderful shir. Also, I'd like to thank for everybody that sponsors shir. We need the help, Rabbi, to sponsor shir. And please call the Eigen Shir at 718-851-8651. Rabbi said the Besmedish made 2 important appeals. Everybody know what hard year we had, the COVID this year. Here we got Bochshem stimulus checks, but in Yisrael, thousands of Avreicha Koilim didn't get paid for the Koil. And this Shabbos they made appeal for Dapta Koil, a very choshev Koil in Yisrael. They need your help to pay the Koilim for months. They need to get paid still backwards. Rabbi says the choshev man going around for Dapta Koil, a choshev Koil in Kriyat Sefer Tamidacham. Please help out as a big schus as much as you can. Appeal number 2, we have the Schit to have us, one of the pioneers of Lag Boim of Maran. He's leaving tonight to Yisrael. Haravagon Rebbe Brand Shlita. He fears drinking for tens of thousands of Yidden. A ganze truck from drinking mit Essen for Yidden was come of Maran. Last year we couldn't have the schus. He's still leaving tonight to Rabbi Brand. Please go over to him. You want to have a schus and Rabbi Shimon. Jeder darf doch größe Yeshiyas. Jeder eine darf Hashmiram and Hashemayim. Go over to him, say, I want to have a chelik in Chayrot, I want to have a chelik in hundreds of Yidden drinking and food. Be a schus, everybody also geholfen werden. Besus a time Rabbi Shimon also geholfen mit a gut geben Shiyom, mit Hatzlochen, Panosse, Nachas, und Shidduchem, mit alle gutes Brachas. Aber Chaim Hashem Rot Geshbach Lazak ist ich habe noch Zeit mit den Mann auf mein Zitka. Jagdil Terbiade.